Hello and welcome to another edition of Toys from the Attic. For today's episode, I thought we'd be taking a look at Kenner's Real Ghostbusters Ghost Popper. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at this guy. In all honesty, this wasn't the same toy that I grew up with. That one was sadly thrown out with a box of other toys that were left out in the rain. I consider those part of my lost collection. But that's a rant for another time. Originally when I grew up with this thing, I didn't much care for it actually. I always thought it was kind of like a cheap knockoff. Well, not a cheap knockoff because it's still made by Kenner, but I always thought it wasn't as good as the Proton Pack because that's what I always wanted. And I always thought this was kind of, sadly to say, the poor man's version of the Proton Pack. Like, if you couldn't afford the pack, this is what your parents got you or other stuff. And I was never always happy with him. I always wanted the pack. I remember when I got it, finally did get it, it was something I always wanted. And so this one was kind of underappreciated. I remember playing on the playground with this one, yes, going back to kindergarten almost 30 years ago. This one was the one you'd give to your friends or other stuff. But now that I'm a little bit older, I can kind of appreciate this, and it is kind of a neat toy. As you can see, the top here definitely looks a little bit thicker. The handle is down here for any kid to hold. It's my big man hands can't hold that anymore. But yeah, you just kind of hold it like this, and you take your Nerf foam tubes here. Ah, Nerf, still going strong today. And you just pull it back and pop it out. Now this thing, depending on how much pressure you could have, testing it out right now, it gives at least a good 10 feet, if not a little bit more. If you're standing up, maybe 15. That might not be that much by today's Nerf standards, but for a little kid, that could be kind of far. Considering that most kids, when this came out, I was only about maybe 4 feet tall at the most. So that's kind of really far. That's really a good distance now that I think about it. These things definitely did get lost pretty easily. You have some holes up here to where you could kind of store them, and I remember mine I didn't have them after a while. I mean, they got lost pretty quickly, so all you kind of had to do was, or you were resorted to pretending that a stream came out of this thing. Let me put these back in here, because one thing I like to do is keep all my stuff together so I don't lose anything now that I'm older. But you also see on the side here, you got a lot of nice little details and sculpted in here. And when you pull the handle back, you can also see that this little yellow, there's a little yellow sticker in there that kind of makes it look like it's powering up, and then it looks over here to where it's fully charged. That's another detail that well, not so much that it was underappreciated when I was younger, but it did actually, I did notice it when I was younger, and I thought that was kind of cool in the toy. Looking back, this thing isn't that bad. I mean, I really like it. It was a nice purchase to get. I got this one off of eBay, but it is something that I'm glad that I got back again. But if you guys are nostalgic for this type of thing, I would definitely snag it up. They're not that hard to come across on eBay. They're not terribly expensive. It's just an all-around nice nostalgic toy to have, and this is probably one that I wouldn't feel bad about giving to one of my kids to play with as opposed to my vintage other Proton Pack. But anyways, this has been a look at the Ghostbusters Ecto Popper.